Hello, hello, hello. So, you're Lauren, and this is what I created so far with your logo inside of After Effects. Scoot that down, zoom this in. I think it's pretty cool. So what I want to do is, obviously, we're not going to be able to go through every single step because this took me maybe about an hour to do. But I do want to give you just the brief overview of how I got to this point. And maybe you'll be able to, work on just the foundational stuff to get to this point if you would like to. So the first thing I did was you gave me a JPEG, and Illustrator and After Effects really work together good if you have vector art. So I went into a new document inside of Illustrator, made sure this was HD TV, made sure my transparency grid was off because this thing is annoying, and then I hit OK. And then I just brought your artwork in here. And they work, like I said, very well together. So here is your logo right there. So I'm just going to place it inside of Illustrator and then just kind of resize it. Now the size of this really doesn't matter too much because of it's going to be vector anyway. So we're kind of cool. Just want to make sure it's fits the screen pretty well so that when I get into After Effects it's good. Alright, so here's the issue is that if we zoom in, you can see that we have pixels in here. And like I said, After Effects doesn't like that too much, especially when we do some of the animations. So when I bring a picture in, you'll see there's an image trace up here. Because you have this in black and white, lots of contrast, if I click image trace, it's good. So all that does is it outlines it and creates the shape. So now if I were to go through, wrong button, and I hit Control-Shift-G while it's selected, that ungroups everything. Come on. Object, ungroup. Oh, sorry. One more step, I just had to hit expand. So I image traced it, expand, boom, now we have it. Now I can hit Control-Shift-G, and now it'll ungroup everything, meaning I can go ahead and delete the stuff that's not needed. So it creates this outline around the border. I can delete that. Because these are enclosed, I'm going to delete the shapes that are inside here too. Okay, and then that should be good. So now over here are all my different layers. So I need to take all of these out of this. So I'm going to take this, take layer 1, go to this arrow and say release 2 layers sequence. And what it does is it makes each one of these an actual layer. Before they were just a group, now they're actual layers. Now I'm going to drag it out of there and delete layer 1. And then I'm just going to go through and turn the eyeball off, figure out what it is, and then just rename this dot 1, dot 2, dot 3, dot 4. Here's the letters of the E. So I switch to the other one. You can see how I have all of these labeled. Okay, so nice and easy. Then I save it as an Illustrator file. Then I went into After Effects. And I'm just going to save this. I'm going to go to a new project. Just so I can start from scratch. You can see how I did this. And I'm going to import your footage in here. So I double click. And it says, what do you want to bring in? And I want to bring in your Lauren vector. And I want to bring this in as a composition retain layer sizes. So I import. And that gives me a composition, and then it gives me each one of your layers. Okay, I'm going to double click the comp. And now if I look, like right here is all your layers. My background is black, the text is black, so I can't see anything. So I'm going to go up to composition settings and just change the background to something so I can see it. So usually like a mid-gray is good. White hurts my eyes, so we go with the mid-gray. It's gorgeous. Cool. All right, so now we have your name right here. What we want to do is animate each one of these pieces. And because each one of these is a separate item, it becomes very easy to do. On that JPEG, that flat JPEG you sent, I couldn't do that as easily. And also, when I would scale up any one of these items, it would turn really grainy. So the first thing I'm going to do is animate these little dots. Okay, this is probably the easiest one that I had to do. So I'm going to open up the toggle switches here on the bottom until I can see where I have this little cube. And I'm just going to click and drag straight down the list. Okay, all of these are going to be 3D layers. So I'm just going to start with the dots and work with those. So I grab all the dots, this one and this one. I make sure my little ticker right here is set to 0, and I'm going to hit P. And what P does, it opens up the position, okay? Because I want to animate the position of each one of these dots. So I'm going to click on the little stopwatch, and you'll see how it sets a keyframe for each one of these. There's keyframes right here. I'm just going to drag these keyframes off maybe to 1 second. So this is 1 second, 0 frames. That's where I moved it to. Then I want to pull these dots straight towards the camera. So I'm going to grab this far right Z, and I'm just going to click and drag to the left. And you'll see how it drags it right towards the camera, right towards where I'm looking. Now to make it a little bit quicker, if I hold Shift and do this, it'll move a lot quicker. Okay, so now if I were just to click and drag here, you can see where the animation's coming in. Okay, so what I want to do is not have them come there. I want them to come out from where basically like in the center here. So if I move the X direction, which is this first one over, you can see how it's changing the direction of where they're coming from. I'm going to also grab the Y and maybe pull that up also. Grab this Z and pull it back further. There we go. All right, so now we have this. Okay, so that looks pretty cool how they're coming like right at that spot. All right, so now I can hit P, not P again. So now I want to grab these guys, and I want them to softly go in there. What's happening now is that they're going at a constant speed. So if I hit the space bar, they all just kind of land. What I want to do is give it a little bit more dynamics. So I'm going to click on all of these, and I'm going to right click, keyframe assistant, and say easy ease. Okay, and you have to right click like right on top of one of these keyframes. So what this will do is it'll slowly move them out and then slowly move them in. So now if I hit play, the space bar, I get a little bit more dynamics to it. They seem to kind of float in, speed up, and then slow down again. Okay, so I'm going to enhance that a bit further. I'm going to click on this guy, and this will take me to my graph editor. If I right click and I say edit the speed graph, and then I click this guy, I'm going to grab this keyframe and I'm going to stretch this out here like that. Okay, so I turn that off, rewind, hit play, and what that gives me is a little bit more speed as it's coming in. Okay, and I could of course grab these and scoot these over to the left, and that will give me even more speed as it's coming in. Okay, so it feels like it's like hitting boom, a little bit more boom. There we go, that's cool. All right, so now I can hit P. That's good. Now I want these to kind of offset because it looks weird having them all come in at the same exact time. So I have to remember dot 1, if I turn the eyeball off, it was on the left, and then dot 5, which is the biggest one, is on the right. And what I want to do is have dot 5 happen first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Oops. Fifth. So I'm going to go to dot 4, and I'm just going to grab this and scoot it over a couple clicks. Okay, I'm doing that for each one. So what should happen now if I rewind this and hit the space bar, we get this nice little rolling. Okay, so that looks pretty cool. All right, and that is perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the dots, I'm going to right click on them and pre-compose them and call this dots. Okay, now the reason I'm doing that is because my dots are all done. There's nothing else I'm going to do to the dots as of now to do anything else. Okay, so they're done. So basically this flattens it into one image or into one area, so I can move this wherever I want. Wherever I want the dots to come in, I could say, you know, don't do anything for 2 seconds and then boom, let's see the dots. That's what we want. So dots are good. I'm just going to leave them there for now. I could even just turn them off so I don't see them and then focus on my next letter. Okay, so my next letter, let's do the E. Okay, because the E is very similar to how we just did the dots. So there's 3 parts to the E, the mid, the top, and the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab each one of these. I'm going to hit S, and I think that was all I did. Yeah. So I'm going to go to the scale of these, and I'm just going to click on the scale. Okay, let me zoom in a bit. Just using the scroll wheel zooms in, and then holding the space bar and clicking and dragging will move you around. And then I'm going to go and move this keyframe down to the end. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm setting the first keyframe as to this is what I want it to look like, and then I just move that down. So then I'm going to click these little chains to unlink this. And I'm going to set, let's see, I'm going to set the first one to, let's say 10. Okay, so what that does is it shrinks each one of these really short. And then I'm going to take this keyframe and pull this out here. Okay, so that's at about 1 second. And then I'm going to grab the Y, which is the center one, and set that to 0. Okay, so what we should have now is it stretches up. Let me click off so you can see it better. It stretches up like this, and then it'll stretch out. Okay, so there's 2 motions, one is up and one is out. So now I'm going to grab these again, just like we did before, and I can right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. I'm going to click on my graph editor and do the same thing. So I want basically the speed, okay, this is what we're controlling, is the speed of how fast this is going. I'm going to drag this to the left. Okay, because I want the speed to happen basically at the early part of it, and then kind of slow down. So I'm going to marquee this and pull this over. And sometimes it's a bit tricky to grab these to do it, but you just got to keep clicking and dragging handles until you grab the ones you want. Oops. And if you make a mistake, you just hit undo. Here we go. Okay, so now we should have is really fast and then slow. And then really fast and then slow. And if I can click it. I'll click the little graph to zoom in a bit. And you can see sometimes this is a bit of a pain. But obviously the benefits are worth it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. So any one of these little dots, I'm just trying to drag it out. All right, that should be good enough. All right, so now if we were to look at this, and it's going to go too slow. I know it is because this whole animation is 2 seconds. That's like way too slow for this. Yeah, see, way too slow. But all I have to do now is just move these keyframes in. So usually people go a little bit longer with stuff than they think they should. So this is all happening less than a second. Okay. That looks cool. Okay. If it helps, because it helps me, make a little sound effect with your stuff. And just like before, we can change the direction of these. So let's say the first one should happen, the bottom, then the mid, and then the top. Okay. So I'm going to say the top, I'm going to move just up here. So the bottom's going to happen first, then the mid, so I just scoot that over, and then the top. There you go. It looks even cooler, right? Awesome. So now the E is done. So I just hide the E, pre-compose, E. Now I'm going to put an underscore with an animation in there. All right, so the E is done, so we can turn that off. Now we'll do the A. And the A is going to be very similar to how I do all the other ones, but I'm going to add something extra to the other ones, which you'll see. So what I want to do is I want to grow basically this A shape. Okay, I want to basically draw the shape out. So I'm going to click off of the A, and I'm going to go over to my pen tool, and I'm going to just outline this shape. There we go. Okay, and you'll see that these are pointed. So what I'm going to do is come over here and expand this, and expand my contents, and expand my shape, and expand the stroke. And where it says butt cap, I'm going to say round. And where it says miter join, there it is, I'm going to say round. There we go. So now we get this nice rounded shape. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to animate this stroke. So we have to add an animator to this. So I'm going to go to add, and I'm going to say animate a trim path. Okay, now there's a lot of crazy stuff happening inside here. We don't need to pay attention to every single bit of it, but I do want you to be able to see the capabilities. So if I click and drag right on this end of the trim path, you'll see how it animates this stroke basically drawing along this. Okay, and that's what I want the A to do. But I don't want it to be like this thick. Now you may need to crank up the stroke width or crank it down, but essentially we want to just fill this entire thing. I want it to cover the entire area. So what I'm going to do is very similar to what we did before. Let me rewind this. I'm going to set my endpoint here and then just drag this over. Then I'm going to reset my end to 0. Okay, so right now there's nothing there, and then it's gradually going to draw that shape onto it. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is grab these, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, go to this, switch to my arrow tool, and drag this over. Okay, there we go. And rewind it again, hit play. Okay, so now we get this like fast to slow motion. I think this one could probably still come over a little bit more. There we go. That's pretty good, maybe a little bit less. All right, that's cool. So now what I want to do is I want to take this this animation on the shape layer, and I want to apply it to the A. Okay. So what I'm going to do is drop the shape layer above the A. All right. Then I'm going to click on the toggle switches, and this guy here, track mat, he's going to one that's going to do the magic. So on the A itself, I'm going to click on this and say alpha mat shape layer 1. Okay. Now it didn't change anything here, but if I rewind, you'll see that it's gone. The A is gone. And now when I click and drag, you'll see the A is getting created. All right. Now the way it's doing this is that it's actually using this layer as like a mask. Okay. So wherever this layer exists, that's where it's showing the A. So you'll see we get this kind of funky thing too right here, where we see this chunk. So I'm going to switch back to my pen tool and just move this point over until that goes away. Okay. So now we get this nice little mask being drawn right on top of it, basically revealing that A. Okay, so you'll see that it also switches this off. All right, very cool. So now I can take these two, because that's all done, and I can pre-compose that and put A and M. All right, so cool, cool, cool. Let's turn the A off. And now let's do the L. Okay, and this is how we're going to do the L. I'm going to go to my ellipse tool, make sure I'm not selecting anything here, and I just want to draw a circle at the center. Now I could draw it and then move it, then whatever, but it's much easier just to double click and then open this up and then open the path up and then change the size. So I'm just going to unclick this and maybe make this 10 by 10. Okay. Up here at the top are all the settings for it. I accidentally deselected. I'm going to take the stroke off, so I click on stroke and say no thank you. And I click on fill and I say yes please, solid fill. And I want the fill color to be black, which it is. And I'm just going to go to my move tool and move this over here. I'm not sure where he went. Let me make him a little bit bigger. I think 10 might be a little bit too small. So just for now I'll make it 30 and I can adjust that. There we go. Okay. So I'm putting this right where this dot is, right on the L. Okay, and I want it to fit. 30 is perfect. Look at that. I'm a genius. I want that to fit right there. Okay, and that's what it does. It fits right there. So now I'm going to go to the position. So I just hit P. And I'm going to go to, let's say, I'm at 1 second right now. So I'm just going to set a position keyframe, then rewind, and then crank this up straight up to the top, like past it. Okay, so it's like way up here. So then I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to grab these, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, go to the thing, click on the thing, grab the thing. Now this one I'm dragging to the right because with gravity this thing would actually be falling faster at the end. So it's going to go slow and then super fast. So if we rewind this and play it, okay, so we see this thing kind of just gradually falling and then falling right on top of it. Cool. So there he is. So he falls and hits the L. Now I want to do a reveal on the L just like I did a reveal on the A. So I'm just going to click off. I'm going to go to my pen tool and just draw the shape of this. I'm going to start a little bit higher though, just so I make sure I grab everything. And start a little bit further off. Alright, so here's my shape layer. And I'm just going to rename this to be L mask. I'm just going to call this one L Dotto. it's Spanish. So on this L mask, I'm going to take the fill and turn the fill off. Don't need the fill. On the stroke, I don't do want a stroke, so I'm just going to add a stroke here as big as this needs to be. Okay, I need it to cover that entire area. Then I'm going to add that trim path again. So I'm going to go back to my contents, go back to add, and say trim path. So now I can open this up, and I can animate this end happening. Okay, so I rewind it to 0, hit a key, go up a smidge, and then put this at 100. Okay, and we'll do the same thing. Like everything that we do when we set keys, we're doing this easy ease on it, and we're adjusting this time. So with this one, I want the speed to happen at the beginning. That way it goes like really quick at the beginning and then kind of slows down. That's cool. All right, so now if we look at that, it goes whoosh. Okay, and I'm going to go into my shape here. I'm going to go into my stroke, and it's just blocky, so I just want to change these back to round. That way it looks nicer. Okay, now in order for this to animate with the L, I got to put it on top. I'm also going to move the L dot down here, or dotto down here. And I'm just going to go to the L, go to that track mat, and say alpha mat L mask. So now you'll see that the L gets drawn. Okay. Now where the magic comes in here is timing it. So when the drop happens, right there, that's where I want this L mask to actually kick in. Okay, and for that matter, the L also. So I'm just going to grab both of these and just scoot this down until that dot has hit. Okay, maybe even like a frame before it. So now if we rewind this and play, you can see how it looks like the dot falls and then just like bleeds into this L, like it's like creating that L. Okay, now if I need to change the speed of anything, I'll hit P for position here. See, I want the dot to fall faster, so I can pull that back. And then I can see the keyframes, I can just pull these back to that. And this is the nice thing about After Effects, is that we have the ability to go ahead and tweak things live. There we go. Okay, the biggest thing is, is it falling maybe too fast? We gotta fix that. In this case it's not, it's falling at a good speed. So now I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to grab the L information. I'm going to pre-compose this. L animation. Okay, so I'm going to do the same exact thing for the U and the N and the R. Okay, these are the same exact animations that you would do on the L. Okay, in this case. Now with the R, I did have a little bit of a different situation, because with this, the R comes up and then it goes like that. Okay, so what I wanted to do is have this come in, hit this area, and then branch off to these other two spots. So let's do the R real quick. Just drop this up here. And I'm going to go in with my pen tool. Make sure nothing's clicked, and I'm just going to outline the R. Okay, so this is the path that's going to go. So I'm going to click and drag here, click and drag there, there, there. Okay, so now this should cover the entire R. So we'll do the same thing, make sure that the stroke is on. Oops, maybe that's too thick. Okay, we have to make sure it fills this area, or fills the entire area. Now I need another one, and the other one, oops, you can see I missed something there, so I'll have to fix that real quick. Just click that. And with my pen tool, I can just adjust it. Okay, so I'm going to click off, I'm just going to draw another path right here. Okay, and that just covers that area. And again, pull the stroke up until it fits. Okay, so now I have two of these paths. So I'm going to go to my my shape, and I'm going to add the trim path. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to rewind. I'm going to set my end point to 0. There we go. Stop playing. I'm going to set a keyframe. I'm going to go up a little bit. Because this is the short one I'm doing, I only need to go up a few frames, like maybe that much. And then set that to 100. Okay, so now we just have this little piece animating. Now I can take this whole trim path and copy it, and then go to this one and paste it. And what it does is it pastes that trim path right inside here. So now my keyframes are already set. which is, I think, pretty sweet. They are in the wrong spot though, so I'm just going to scoot this over. And obviously this part's going to need to be a little bit longer because of what it is, so I'm just going to grab this and scoot it over. Okay. With keyframes it's easy because you can just change all the stuff on there. It goes too quick, it goes too slow, whatever. So let's go and easy ease this. Let's go into this. And we're going to do the same thing I did before. So I'm just going to grab these, and I want to just push all these to the left. Okay? That way the speed happens right at the beginning. Cool. Now we did miss another spot right there. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this little thing. Oops. It's like right in the border, so maybe I just need to make this like 30. There we go. And I'm also going to take my shape, my stroke, and do the same rounding. It's always good to have these rounding ones on here because it creates just a softer, comfortable shape. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to close these for now. That's good. All right, so now they all both happen at the same time. I don't want them to both happen at the same time. What I want to happen is this one starts writing, and when it gets to about here, that's when the next one's going to start writing. So I'm just going to drag this over to a boot here. And perfect. That's gorgeous. Okay, so let's take these two down by the R. Now, the way that this track mat works, I can only do one at a time. I can only do this one, or I can do the other one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just take these two and right-click and pre-compose them and say R mask. And what that does, it puts it into one layer that I could then go to the R and then do the alpha matte. And now we're going to get that. So there it is. Okay, so then what we want to do is I need to animate then the dot coming in, right? So same thing, I'm going to go to my circle, I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to make sure that my ellipse path is set to, I think 30, and 30 was the magic number there. I'm going to make sure I have a fill color of black. There we go. And I'm going to go and position this right about there. Okay, basically I'm filling in that circle. I'm going to hit P for my position. I'm going to set a keyframe. I'm going to rewind and just pull this straight off the board. Okay, so now we have way too long. Let's bring this in. Let's make it easy ease. And let's go to the graph editor. Let's grab this junk, and we'll pull it to the right because it'll be going faster right as it approaches it. There we go. Okay, so now I just need to offset the R stuff. So let's pull this down here. Let's rename it. So I hit the Enter key, call it R dot, and I think that should just be a little bit closer in. Okay, so I'm going to grab these two and just move them down to about there, right where the keyframe is. There we go. Maybe a little bit faster here. There is a nice area you have to find, like where it works, because you don't want to do that. Like it looks like it stops, boom, and then writes it. So what I want to do is pull it back a frame, so that way it looks like it blends right into it. Okay, might be harder to see in the video, but that's what it's doing. All right, so let's take the R, recompose it, R anim, good to go there, turn that off. All right, now I guess we only have the two letters left, so why not just do these real quick, okay? So same setup that we did before, double click this, go to my ellipse shape, change the size to 30 and 30. Now because I need one for the U and one for the N, why not just duplicate this, right? So I'll just duplicate it so I have two, and now I can call this one the U dot and the N dot. And I'll just put these accordingly right by where they're at. Cool. And then the same thing, I have my pen tool, so let's just go and draw the shapes. I'm going to start past this, come down here, click and drag, click and drag, click. Okay, then I'm going to take the fill off. I'm going to take the stroke up. Okay, so we have that drawn out. So now we will click off, and then we're going to just draw the N. We have to click off every time, because otherwise what it's going to do is it's going to start the path on the same layer, and that doesn't do us any good. Okay, and this one we can probably thin down quite a bit. Okay, we just gotta make sure that we cover our bases, and oops, make sure these things are set up correctly. You don't want to cut anything off, obviously, so maybe 30 right there. And if we need to, we can add an extra point and kind of shuffle things around. When I did the N, it was a little bit tricky because of these areas here that are overlapping. Okay, so I had to create this kind of janky shape. That's cool. And it made it black. It doesn't matter, black or white. There we go. Cool. So we have our dots. We have our masks. Let's drag these to the right spot. So this is the U mask. This is the N mask. So let's do the same thing. U mask. N mask. And we're going to go to our trim path. So I'm just going to open this up, add a trim path, rewind it, and we'll go to the end. We'll go up a little bit, and oops, wrong way. Put this here. That's where we want it to end. Then we'll start the 0. There we go. So now we get this thing to grow. Okay, and again, going into our shape, into our path, our stroke, set these to round, so we get these nice round shapes, and it looks again much nicer. Okay, so we'll do the same thing we did before. Right click, keyframe assistant. Lots of repetition. Our classes are basically building you on these fundamentals. So an assignment like this seems daunting, obviously, for someone if you've never used After Effects, but within the first few weeks, this is like a piece of cake. Cool. So that's that one. Now let's go. I'm just going to open this up until I get to my trim path. There it is. And I'm just going to copy it, rewind it, go to my N mask, and paste it. That way I have the path done for it. Right? Make it easier for yourself. And even the speeds, those all came along with it too. So now let's go to my U dot. And I'm going to animate this. And I may need to turn off my mask just so I can see it. Okay, hit position. This is where you want it to end. So let's say at frame 12, be right there. And then at frame whatever, be like way up top. And then we'll go through and ease it. And there are plugins also, like little scripts that eventually we get into that just make your life a lot easier. So that way you can just click and say, do this every time. And it does it every time. All right, so that's good. Now I'm going to grab the N one. We'll set it over here. Go. Now I can't copy and paste the keyframes for this because I've moved it. So the positions and all that changed. So that's something that obviously I have to do each time, but you can see it's no big deal once you've done it a few times. It becomes much simpler. Okay, there we go. So now he's off screen. Now we grab these, ease it, graph editor, coolio. Okay. So now I'm just going to adjust my timing. So my U mask and my U dot can't happen until my U has fallen down, which is about there. So I'm just going to nudge this over. Same thing with the N mask and the N itself. So now if we rewind and play, we can just kind of watch both of these. Oops, turn that mask back on so I can see it. A little glitchy. There we go. Okay, so now let's apply this. So we're going to go to our U and say use the mask. We're going to go to the N say use your mask. So now we should see these things getting written out. Awesome. So now I'm going to go into this and pre-compose LogoAnim. Go into this, right click, pre-compose anim. Cool. I can turn all these back on and we can see everything happening at once. Okay, it's a lot to take in, and our brains, my brain at least, is not capable of watching every single one of these at the same time. It's too much stuff going on. So what I want to do is I want to take each one of these and I want to actually just offset them. Okay, so in the order, I'm just going to start them at the top. So I want the L to happen first, then the A, then the U, then the R, I think you know how to spell your name, E, the N, and then the dots. Okay, so now I'm just going to take each one of these and just move it over. That's all I have to do. The animation is locked in, so it starts right there. Maybe a little bit further. So I'm just offsetting each one of these animations so they just start at a little bit later. Okay, so now if we hit play, oh, wait, why didn't my L start yet? No, because the L is still dropping down. All right, let me go back to my, if I double click any of these, it'll take me right to the animation. So you can see that this one, the dot's falling right at the beginning, but it takes some time to get there. So let's go back to Lauren Vector. Let's grab all these and just scoot them down some. There we go. Okay, it's still a little bit kind of bunched up, so let's really kind of space these out some. Okay, we want to have a little bit of overlap to the point where it looks like it's flowing. There we go. So that feels better, right? Note that A is still starting way before the L. Let me really crank this over. There we go. So now the L is starting, then the A is starting. And now the U, I need to pull the U up so it starts a little bit sooner. There we go. So I don't want the A to be done before we see anything with the U. I want that U to be like drawing already. There we go. And then same thing here with the R. I want to pull that over. And then gotta get this E going too. Nope, that's too soon, E. We're not there yet. And then I gotta pull this N over. Okay. And then the dots. Cool. All right, so I'm going to save this as Lauren 02. Okay, so this is pretty cool. It works, you know, relatively quickly. We were able to kind of set that up. Bloop. Awesome. A couple other things we can add to this that will really help. Like if I go to here, you can really see it here. It would be great if we had a little bit of blurring on here as fast as they're going. Now if I go to this toggle switches and modes, I can turn on motion blur and then say, let me see motion blur. Okay, now because there is actually no animation here, like this specific layer does not animate, it's the stuff inside this is animating. I have to go into each one of these toggle switches and enable their motion blur. Okay, so I'm just going to go into each one. And that's what this little guy is, motion blur. Turn him on. And I'm just clicking and dragging straight down the list. Okay, so all those animations we did, they don't actually like flatten out. You can always go back into them and tweak them, which is awesome. Especially if, you know, someone said, you know, the end doesn't look right. Can you fix this or that or whatever? Very simply, you can go in there and do that. All right. So now if you look at this, you can see we got this nice little motion blur effect happening on here. So now as everything starts animating, it's going to go a little bit slower, but we'll get this nice little blend on here. If you look right there, you get this nice little blend, which is awesome. Okay, especially for that. All right. So if we look up here in our project area, this is all the stuff we've done. Here's all the different compositions we've created. And then here's obviously our original layer artwork. Okay, so this Lauren Vector one is the one we've done all of our work on. So to create the little googly type thing that I did in the example, I'm going to drag this onto a new composition. Okay, and what it does is it creates a brand new composition, basically like a flattened out version of this. It's very similar to me just going into here and grabbing everything and pre-composing it. That would have done pretty much the same thing. So what I'm going to do is now take this and I'm going to put, let me just zoom up a little bit so I can see the words. I'm going to go under my effects. I'm going to go to color correction right here. And I'm going to say hue and saturation. Okay. So what this will let me do is colorize this stuff. Okay. So right now it's black, so there's no lightness. So I need to add some lightness into here. And then I need to add some maybe saturation so it's a little bit brighter. And then I can play with the hue. And you can see by just doing this, I'm getting different colors. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take this now and duplicate it. So I clicked on the Lauren vector and duplicated it however many times I want. Like, let's say 6 is a good number, or 5. 5 is a good number. So I'm going to go to this first one, and I'm just going to change the color. Okay, so let's say that color. Then I'm going to turn the eyeball off, click the next one, change the color. So this one will be, let's see, I like this blue, maybe it's a little bit too saturated. I just need to play with that. There we go. Okay, turn the eyeball off, go to the next one. And we'll go to different color here. It's cool. Turn that one off, go to the next one. Just try to remember what colors you've already used before so you don't obviously pick the same ones. All right, and that one we can leave there. Okay, so we have 5 distinct colors. Now if I hit play, the top one is the only one we're really seeing because the other ones are basically stacked on top of it. But if I take the bottom one and leave it where it is, and I just go to the next layer and I just scoot this over a couple frames, scoot this over a little bit, scoot this over a little bit, and scoot this over a little bit, you can see we're kind of getting this like Google type effect. So now we rewind and hit the space bar, and now we're getting this look like it's filling it in. So then you could really go with any colors you want. You know, find a good color combination that matches nice. Now you can see how much slower this is going because we have motion blur on here. It's going to go a little slower. We are rendering this at full resolution just so I can zoom in and out without worrying. There we go. So now if I rewind this again, hit play. Awesome. Okay, so it's only like a couple frames, 4 and 7 seconds, 4 seconds and 8 frames. Animation, but it's definitely awesome, especially the flexibility we have to tweak anything we want. We can always go to that last color. If we don't want pink, we can change it to whatever color is our favorite color in the world, right? You can find a good color palette, something that's maybe monochromatic, and use that too. That's kind of neat. Awesome. All right, and then there's a couple other things too that we could add to this just to make it a little fancier. Let me save this again. I'm going to go to my other project just so you can see how involved we can make this. And a lot of it is just, you know, tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. So if you look, I have the Lauren vector, which is the same thing we had before. We offset each one of these. We got the animation, and then I dropped that into Lauren vector 2. I'm sorry, not Lauren vector 2. I dropped that into Lauren letters, there it is. And that's where I did this little effect, right? Just like we saw before. And that was dropped into Lauren vector 2, where I created this background. So I added, there's a flat color. So I added a solid. So under layer, new solid, gives me basically a platform where I can pick colors. And then under the effects, I went to generate and added a 4-color gradient. And that allowed me to pick 4 different colors for these corners that I could use. So just to kind of give you a preview of that, let's say I crank this one up to yellow. You can see how I have this yellow in the corner. Each one of these corners have a different color. Then I added a solid on top of it just to give some brightness inside here. I dropped that into another composition. And this is, you know, there's a lot of complexity here because of what I wanted the end result to look like. Okay, and there we go. Pretty cool. Now to make this an actual movie, I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Export and add it to the render queue. And this is going to take all of the stuff that we've done inside of After Effects and actually make it into something that is a QuickTime that we could then publish on YouTube or put on our phone or whatever. So I'm going to go to the output module where it says lossless and click on it. On here, I'm going to change my format to QuickTime. I'm going to change my format options make sure this says it to H264, which it is. Hit okie dokie. There's no audio, but I could obviously add audio to this. I'm going to go to where it says output 2, click on the name, and this is going to go into, I'll just throw it into my desktop for now. I'm going to call this Lauren logo. Hit save, and then we hit this render button on the side. And what that does is, again, makes this video into an actual QuickTime movie that we could then watch all day long, or loop it, or turn it in for an awesome grade. Okay, not my work though, you gotta do your own work. Alright, so then once it's done, this little bar will go all the way across, and then it'll be done, and then we'll have a QuickTime. And if I jump to my After Effects, I use VLC, so it's going to open up VLC, and I'll be able to see the magnificent Lauren's logo. Sweet! It's pretty awesome. Obviously, we could animate this several different ways. You know, this was how I chose to animate it. You could have had this thing just kind of like slowly streak down and then go into that. You could have had these things like unfolding. You could have had, you know, any number of different ways to animate this. This is the way that I chose to animate it. Now, just to show you a little goofy thing I accidentally did, is I left this playing basically for too long. So the dots eventually disappeared. And that's because if I go back to my Lauren vector and I go through this, the logo is already done here, so there's no point in showing all of this. So I can take this blue tab and just pull it back, and that way it'll only render out up to that area. So then I would go back to my export, add to render queue, and then export that out. Okay, cool. I hope you enjoyed this, and it was fun for me, and I think I'm actually gonna create more things like this in my class, just because it was actually pretty simple to do once I went through the steps of it.